There's one simple mistake that many Americans make when doing a rollover from a 401k to an IRA that could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. According to a recent article that I saw in the Wall Street Journal, Vanguard estimates that this is costing Americans over $172 billion each year collectively. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what this mistake is and how you can avoid it. Hey everyone, my name is Jake Skellhorn. I'm a certified financial planner and the co-founder of Spark Wealth Advisors. We're a retirement planning firm located here in Florida. If you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel to stay up to date on any future videos. So first and foremost, what is a 401k rollover? A lot of you watching might know what a 401k rollover is, but just to cover some basics really quick before we get into that big mistake. 401k rollover is simply taking money from your previous employer's 401k and moving it to a new retirement account, a new qualified retirement account like an IRA, another 401k, 403b, whatever it might be. You can actually do rollovers with your current employer's plan if you're over age 59 and a half in most cases, but it's more common to do after you've left your job. Now, once again, this big mistake that we're referring to is when rolling from a 401k to an IRA specifically, which is an individual retirement account. So there's two types of rollovers. You can do a direct rollover, which is almost always recommended. That is where the money is sent from the 401k to the IRA directly. So if you have a 401k at Vanguard and an IRA at Fidelity, Vanguard will issue a rollover check made payable to Fidelity for the benefit of John Doe's IRA, something like that. An indirect rollover is where you would take the money out of the Vanguard 401k plan as a taxable distribution, and then within 60 days, put that money into the IRA at Fidelity. There's many problems with an indirect rollover, so you definitely want to avoid it wherever you can. Mainly that you do have to withhold taxes when you take a withdrawal, so you're basically left with 80% of your balance that you can put into an IRA. So again, direct rollover is usually the way to go. But the most important thing here is that a 401k rollover, I would say 95% of the time, is done as a check. So when you're moving the money from a 401k to an IRA, a physical check is mailed. It's an old school process, but that's just how it's done pretty much everywhere. But with a check, obviously, investments have to be liquidated in your 401k plan first, and a check is essentially treated as cash. So if you've ever done a 401k to an IRA rollover before, you might see where this is going. But since that rollover check is cash, once it's deposited to an IRA, it stays as cash until you decide to reinvest it. So the big mistake that Americans make every single year is not going in and reinvesting that cash in the IRA. Now, I'm not saying that every single person doing a rollover should reinvest that money immediately. If you are retired, it may take you some time to figure out what investments are more appropriate for you now that you're not working. You may want to take on a lower level of risk, etc. But if you're doing that intentionally, that's one thing. It's another thing completely if you're 20 years away from retirement and you forget to reinvest that money. So according to Vanguard research, back in 2015, they estimated that a third of people who had rolled over their 401ks to an IRA in 2015 still had it completely in cash 7 years later. So if you know anything about the rule of 70, if you had a 10% return over that 7 years, you would have doubled your money. So again, this is where that big mistake comes in, not reinvesting that money so it continues to compound and grow in the market. According to Vanguard, this can cost collectively over $172 billion in lost market gains among Americans collectively each year. I'll include a link to this article in the description below, by the way, but it goes on to say that an advisor was working with a new pair of clients who came to her with $400,000 in an IRA that they had rolled over from their 401k about a year earlier. And they were wondering why their money hadn't grown while the stock market was up 20+% that given year. And obviously in this case, it's because they just left that money in cash and they had no idea. So in this example, the advisor estimated that they missed out on about $100,000 just for sitting out of the markets for 1 year. So just a quick stat to give you an idea of where these numbers are coming from. Since 1926, US large cap stocks have returned about 7.19% per year on average after adjusting for inflation, whereas cash is closer to 0.3% after adjusting for inflation. So once again, if you are someone who is many, many years away from retirement or needing that money in your IRA, you definitely want to avoid this mistake by reinvesting that as soon as possible. Going back to the example in the article, obviously that advisor corrected the mistake as soon as possible, got those folks reinvested, but just to show you the compounding effect of sitting in cash and letting this mistake go unchecked, over the long term, the effects of this mistake can be compounded. So if they had come to that advisor with that money already reinvested, they'd have closer to $500,000 as she estimated, rather than $400,000. So that $100,000 difference that they missed out on in just 1 year, over the long run, still has an extreme effect on the ending balance of their portfolio after 20 years. So as you can see in these charts here, if they had an expected return of 7.19%, as we mentioned is the average for US large cap stocks, they would end up with $420,000 more. They had that money reinvested the whole time. There's a few solutions to avoiding this mistake and making sure you don't miss out on any market gains. Number one being just keeping your money in the 401k plan through your old employer. Most of the time, you're not required to move that money at all. It'll stay invested just as it was when you were working there. Yeah, obviously you can no longer add money to that 401k after you've left the company, but it's not just going to be converted into cash after you end your employment there. It'll stay invested. So that's the first option. Don't rush into rolling over to an IRA immediately unless you are looking for more investment choices, lower fees, things like that, depending on the fees for your plan. Number two is just be diligent about reinvesting that money once it hits your IRA. Think of the whole process as 3 steps. Number one would be opening the IRA if you don't already have one. Number two is initiating the rollover with the old 401k provider. Remember to do that as a direct rollover, not an indirect rollover. And number three is monitoring that check for deposit into the IRA and knowing that it's not going to be automatically reinvested. So the third solution, obviously I'm going to be biased towards, is that working with an advisor can help you prevent these mistakes. Having a second set of eyes on all of your finances and investments often helps avoid these costly mistakes, and I see it time and time again. So there's also the option to work with a robo-advisor, which is online platforms that will automatically invest any cash that hits an account. So those are 3 solutions to help you avoid this mistake in the future. So if you are a DIYer, make sure that you avoid this mistake when rolling over your 401k, either to an IRA or to a new job. The good thing about rolling it to a new 401k is that usually that money is automatically invested in a 401k. There are some talks in Congress to expand those provisions to IRAs as well, to have some sort of default investment choice in an IRA. But if you're approaching retirement and not sure what to do with your 401k in general, I made this video about all of your different options and the pros and cons to each. So make sure to check that out. Leave a comment below with any questions, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.